Welcome to day 2 of our Complete Beginners Yoga course. I hope that you enjoyed last week's and we're going to expand a little bit more onto it today. The theme of today's class is truthfulness, and this is the second of the yamas as outlined in Patanjali's The Yoga Sutras. Don't worry if you don't know what that means, we will be going through it a little bit later on in the course, but I actually just want to jump straight into today's class. So make sure that you are in a comfortable position. I'm going to be sitting cross-legged. I've got my lovely little body here. I'm going to be sitting cross-legged, but if you want to sit up on a chair, if you want to sit in a different position, that is completely fine, especially as today's theme is truthfulness. So start from where you are. In this course, I'm not going to be suggesting any equipment simply because I don't know what you've got in your home. So I don't want to be saying that you need to have things in order to do your yoga. But if you have got equipment, please feel free to use it. Use your yoga blocks, use your blankets, use your cushions, use whatever you have. So the first thing we're going to do is come to a comfortable position for ourselves. And we're just going to simply spend the first portion of this class grounding and checking in with ourselves. And this is a really important element of our yoga practice. It can be tempting to skip it. It can be tempting to just want to do the asanas, but the asanas take such a small part of the practice. An asana just means the physical postures. So make sure you're going to be lovely and comfortable. And if you can, bring your shoulders so your shoulders are over your hips. And this is going to help open up the lungs and give you lots of space for your breath. And we're going to take a moment here to allow the rest of the day to fall away and arrive here. Congratulate yourself for taking this time, knowing that you have showed up for yourself today. And maybe take the gaze down towards the floor, or even close your eyes. And the first point in truthfulness is to notice where we are. So we're going to have a check-in. And this happens often in yoga classes where a teacher might ask you to check in with yourself. And this is a simple turn in of your awareness and a quick question of what's going on for me right now. And see if you can keep this really light. So we're used to telling ourselves stories about what's going on. So you might be tempted to tune in and say, oh, I feel a bit like this and because of that. See if you can let go of that urge, and instead of saying, I feel frustrated because blah, 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 simply notice the frustration and notice how this presents itself. Do you have any feelings anywhere in the body? And try not to label these as good or bad. Simply notice. And this might feel really counterintuitive, but whatever you're feeling today, whatever's going on for you today, see if you can welcome that in. And I want you to take some big, slow, deep breaths like we did last week, where you're breathing into the side of the ribs, the back of the body. And we're going to practice a traditional yoga breath called Ujjayi breathing. And Ujjayi means ocean breath. And it's called this because we make the sound of the ocean. So turn your awareness to your breath. And if at any point when we're doing these breathing exercises you don't like it or you don't feel comfortable, remember you're in charge. You can just sit it out and enjoy sitting having a little break. I want you to imagine that I've just popped a little mirror in front of your face. And as you're breathing out, I want you to huff up the mirror. So you're making that noise that you would make if you were steaming up a bathroom mirror to write your name on. And this is very light. We don't need to try and make the longest breath we physically can. We don't need to make a competition with ourselves. Just breathe at your normal pace, but have that lovely light on the out breath. And then see if you can do that on the in breath as well. So you're breathing in, breathing out. And if you're unsure how to make this noise, think if you were doing an impression of Darth Vader, but make it really light and airy, so like a happy Darth Vader. And then, if you can, close your mouth and continue this through the nose. And as you breathe out, imagine that the out breath is like the waves crashing on the shore. And as you're breathing out, the breath is like those waves traveling back up the beach, ready to crash again. And you don't need to count your breath. You don't need to force your breath. If you lose it, just welcome it back when you remember. If it makes you feel lightheaded, you're probably just breathing too much. You're probably trying too hard. 9 times out of 10, the issue that people have with pranayama is they try too hard. One more breath like this. Lovely. And then we're going to take our legs, just give them a little shake. Do any little movements you need to do here. And we're going to make our way up to a standing position. So get up in as many movements as you need to make. And when we come up to standing, we're going to come back to that mountain pose that we did at last week. So you're going to bring your feet hip distance apart. You're going to bring your hands so the palms are facing forward. Relax those shoulders down the back. And let's just check in with our pelvis again. We're not going to take as long as we did last week to do this. It's going to be quite quick. So you're just going to make sure you're not tipping that water out the front of the back of your pelvis. And we're going to lengthen up. And I want you to bring that Ujjayi breath to your physical posture. And as you're breathing in, imagine the breath is coming up the bottom of the legs from the ground. And as you're breathing out, it's coming down through the arms, through the fingers, out the top of the head. And let's come into that warrior one position that we did last week. So you're going to step your right foot back, turn the heel slightly in, toes slightly out, hips facing forward. Now the warrior positions are there to build strength and stamina in the legs. So you're going to bend that front knee just until it's in line with the heel. Can we remember this pose from last week? Lovely. So we're trying not to grip onto the mat with our toes. And we're going to keep our front leg exactly as it is because we're going to move into a position called Warrior Two. So we're going to keep our front leg exactly as it is so that hip, knee and ankle are all in line. But we're going to start to open our hips towards the long end of the mat. So you're going to turn this back foot. So instead of it pointing forward, we're going to turn the back foot to face the long end of the mat. And with it, you're going to bring your hips. Now, what might happen for most people is that as you bring your hips open, this knee is going to start to want to wander in the center. Now, try to keep your knee stacked over your heel and open up through the hips. Now, that might mean that you don't get your hips completely flush with the long end of the mat, and that is fine. I'm going to take the hands on the hips. So one common issue that people have with this pose is that they bring their chest too far forward. And all that does is it just puts a little bit of extra work into this front hip that you don't need. So see if you can line your shoulders up with your hips. It'll feel a little bit like you're surfing the pose. And you're going to have your legs as wide apart as feels comfortable for you. You might see sometimes that yoga people in yoga classes come all the way down to like this kind of level. Now this is very strong on the hips, it's very strong on the glutes. So we're going to work with a shorter stance, and maybe over years we might start to lengthen it out or not. It doesn't really matter. This back foot, I want you to turn it ever so slightly towards the front, like we did when we were in Warrior One. So if 12 o'clock is straight up to the long end of the mat, you're going to turn that back foot in to about 10:30, 11 o'clock. And then we are going to roll the shoulders down and reach the arms parallel with the floor. Now, as you bring your arms up, like we did last week, what might happen is those shoulders start to come up as well. See if you can keep your shoulders down. That might mean you have to have a slight bend in the arms. Again, that is completely fine. And then just turn your palms to face downwards. And if it feels nice, you might turn your head to look over that middle finger. And this is Warrior Two pose. Very, very strong on the legs. And then bring the hands down. Beautiful. Let's turn the feet to face the long end of the mat and give yourself a little wiggle. We're going to do that exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to turn around because then I'm still facing the camera, but you can just swap legs if you want. You don't have to do that. So we're going to bring the hips forward into our Warrior One position. Again, remember, you try not to pour all the water out the front of your bucket. And then you're going to bend your front knee just until it's in line with the heel. Keep that front leg exactly where it is. Now, what we are trying to avoid here is gripping onto the mat with your toes. See if you can bring a little bit of weight into the heel. Keep that front leg exactly where it is. And we're going to turn the hips towards the long end of the mat. And as we turn the hips, that knee is not rolling in, it's staying in line with the heel. Let's place our hands onto our lower back and just check that you're not sticking your bum out. You don't need to tuck the tailbone under either. You just want to have a neutral pelvis bucket. Let's bring the arms parallel with the floor. Just make sure that you're not rolling those shoulders up. Slide them down. Spread the fingers. Relax the shoulders. We're going to just hold that. I'm just going to wiggle my mouse so that my camera doesn't go into standby mode. One more breath here. And then bring the arms down. Turn the feet. Turn the feet to face the long end of the mat and give yourself a little wiggle. Well done. Bring the legs together. And I want you to give your legs a good old shake getting any tension that we've got out of there. So warrior two legs and warrior one legs are the base of so many of the other yoga postures. What you'll find with yoga is that at the beginning, it's quite complicated because we're having to learn everything from scratch. But as it goes on, the more advanced postures are just the basic postures kind of added together. So it actually gets easier to learn the more you go on. So we're going to come to warrior two legs again. We're gonna practice stepping that foot back, turning the back foot ever so slightly in, and lining the knee up with the heel. Eventually, this will just become second nature to you. You'll just be able to step back and your body will just be able to feel where your warrior two is, but it might take a bit of practice to begin with. Bring your arms parallel with the floor. And we're going to do something that is really common in yoga classes. We're going to reverse our warrior. So to reverse your warrior, you're going to take your back hand, you're going to place it on your lower back, and I just want you to notice this back shoulder. So what tends to happen here is we kind of roll this shoulder forward, but we want to create as much space in the chest as possible. So we're going to pick up that shoulder and roll it down and back. So if this elbow was a chicken wing, I want you to bring your chicken wing back. Bring the hand, the front hand, parallel with the floor, and I want you to turn the palm up towards the ceiling. And then we're going to practice. So you're going to reach that arm up into the air and really extend through the front of the chest. Lovely. Now, as you do that, just notice if you want to stick your bum out and try and keep your bum in neutral. And then we're going to come back down. Lovely. Let's do that same thing on the other side. So step your feet together, give yourself a wiggle. Now remember, I've come to the back of my mat so that when I step back, I'm still facing the camera, but you don't need to do that. And then we're going to step back with your other leg. Let's see if we can catch ourselves in that warrior two position. Bring your arms parallel with the floor. Ooh, let's check in with this back foot. Make sure your foot hasn't rolled in or out. You want to keep it right in the middle. And then we're going to flip that front hand up towards the sky. Take that back hand, place it on the lower back. Let's give our little chicken wing flap. Let's bring it back and reach up. Lovely. Maybe looking up towards the sky. Big deep breaths here. Keep that front leg bent, but don't let it roll in or out. And then come all the way back up. Step your feet together. Give yourself a little wiggle. Let's do that again because we're going to add something else to it. And this is the last warrior two thing we're doing. So if your legs are starting to get tired, we are almost finished with this. But think about all that strength you're building, so keep at it. Unless it doesn't feel right. Okay, stop. So take your right leg, step it back. Let's come back to that warrior two position. You're going to take your back hand, you're going to place it on your lower back. You're going to turn your front arm up. And as you're breathing in, you're going to reach the arm up, but you're also going to straighten out the front leg. And as you're breathing out, I want you to bring that back arm straight, and we're coming into those warrior two arms and legs. Breathe in, reach up. Breathe out, come down. Let's go at your own breath rhythm here. I'm not going to count it because I just want you to get used to breathing and moving at your own pace. One more. And let's float the arms down. Let's just turn the legs straight over to the other side. Float the arms up. And let's just go straight in with this. So you're breathing in, straighten out the leg, reach the arm up. Breathing out, back to your warrior two. Just go completely at your own pace. Enjoy having some time when nothing else is asked of you except moving and breathing. Lovely. Let's do one more here. And come all the way back. Give yourself a little wiggle. Let's step the feet together. And we're going to do a forward fold. So I want you to find somewhere in your room that you can put your hands against. So I'm going to use my bookshelf here, but maybe you've got a chair or a washing basket. And we're going to start with Tandasana feet. So we're going to bring our feet hip distance apart. And I want you to just check that you're not rolling the weight in or out here. And the good forward fold happens from the hips because we're wanting to get the work into the back of the legs. We're wanting to work the hamstrings. Now, if I was to ask you to just pick something up off the floor, what most people do is they go like this and they round in this part of the back. So if I just ask someone to do a forward fold without any indication of how to do it, what tends to happen is people start to round in your back and you get this as your forward fold. Now, there's nothing, it's not going to damage you doing your forward fold like that unless you've got some underlying back conditions, but it just means that it bypasses the hamstrings. So we want to get this into the hamstrings as much as possible. So we're going to do our forward fold from the hips. So just have a little look at this. Instead of coming from here, we're going to try and come from here. Now this might mean that you don't come as far forward as you would as you physically can, but that's okay because we're targeting the hamstrings. It's not about how far you can come down, it's about getting those hamstrings lovely and stretched. So we're going to take our hands onto the hips, and I want you to imagine that I've come along and I've just put a rope around the bottom of your hips. And I want you to lift up and over the rope, and then imagine that the rope is lifting your bum up towards the sky and you're coming up and over the rope. Now you may only come to about here, and that's completely fine. If that's the case, bring your hands onto the wall, or maybe you can start to walk yourself down to maybe about a 90-degree angle. Now, don't worry, remember the theme is truthfulness, so it doesn't matter if you don't get to 90 degrees. And you might need to bend your legs. Again, that's fine as well. But imagine there's a rope around your hips and your hips are being lifted up and back so you can feel this in the back of the thighs. You may feel it in the calves as well. That's fine. 2 more big deep breaths here. And then I want you to bend your legs, send your bum up and back, and then take the hands off the floor and come into a forward fold from here. And just let the back of the head relax. Big deep breaths here. If this doesn't feel comfortable, just come back up to what we were doing before. And then send the bum back as we hinge all the way up to standing. And we're going to make our way back to a seated position. So again, you can sit on your chair, you can sit on the floor, cross-legged, you can sit however you're comfortable. And we're going to take the right hand and I want you to bring your right hand to your left knee. So this twist is coming from the belly button. So as we turn, the temptation is to kind of turn everything, but see if you can keep your pelvis facing forward. So this turn is coming from the belly button, and you're just going to place your opposite hand on your opposite knee. Relax the shoulders down, and then bring your other hand behind and just place that hand on the floor and use that as a little bit of support to lengthen through the back. Big deep breaths here. Don't force it. When you've got your hands on your knees, it's so tempting to kind of use that as a force to come round, but don't do that. Just use the twist that your body wants to do. And then slowly come back to the center. Let's do the same on the other side. Big deep breath. And come back to the center. So we're going to make our way down onto our backs and we're going to come to a position called constructive rest. Now, if lying on your back is unobtainable for you, feel free to do this lying, not lying down, on your seat or sitting cross-legged, that's fine. But if you can, you're going to come to this position called constructive rest where your legs are bent and your feet are flat on the floor. Bring your hands by the side, palms facing upwards. Close your eyes. And I want you to just have a moment where you don't have to think, feel, do, or be anything in particular. And exist exactly as you are. And think of something that you can do for the rest of the day to nourish yourself. And take the biggest breath you've taken all day. And then take an even bigger one. And then we're going to start to just hug the knees in towards the chest, rock from side to side. And whenever you're ready, you're going to roll to one side and make your way up to a seated position. So thank you so much for joining me. It really does mean a lot. And if you can and you've done it and you want to share, please share that you've done it with me because it makes such a difference. And I love hearing that you've done the class. So thank you very much and I will see you next week. Bye everyone.